morning. Hello, how are you? Welcome back to Mending Threads, your safe place and your stronghold for whole body wellness. This is a transformational series, and today we're going to be looking at the trauma and the impact of trauma on our lifestyle and our wellness and decisions that are made in our life. We're going to have with us today Miss Bromwell Lucas from Able Counseling Services and Sister Mama Sonia from these Three Sisters in the Spirit Theater Ministry. So I hope that you enjoy our discussion, but more so, I hope you take away from the talk today things that you will put in practice with parenting and the decisions that you're going to make in your life. So we look forward to a good show today, and I look forward to hearing from you as to how you have enjoyed it. Thank you. And welcome, Sister Mama Sonia. So we have today with us Ms. Brahma Lucas, who is a therapist in the area and who has been working providing therapeutic interventions with individuals, families, and communities. And I want to welcome her to Mending Threads this morning. We also have with us Sister Mama Sonia, who we know, and we want to hear what she has to say because she's so fantastic. Three Sisters in the Spirit organization, because she's so good at interpreting what is said and not said. And she takes what is not said and makes it palatable for us to kind of move on and have a take on that other people can understand through theater. So I want to welcome us this morning. Now, our topic, we have seen in the news so much. We have seen the pandemic. We have had historical situations, and now we have something that is going on in our environment now, which we have a trauma following a pandemic. Traumas, may I say. So today what I thought, without blaming, I want it to be digestible, but two, they call it telling the truth. So one of the things is we want to look at how trauma impacts our life, our health. They call it, and I wanted to give the proper word for it, and the proper word is going to be epigenetics. So what it does is it looks at how trauma affects our health. You know, the things that we eat, how we choose those things, education, how we rear our children, and vice versa, looking at the infinity of it, and that it also, what we eat, then terms of how we can handle the trauma and experience that we are involved with. So one of the things that we are looking at is that the difference between stress and trauma is that we have stress every day. Stress is something that is coming to us that impacts our lives, impacts what we do, our choices. But the thing is that when stress is prolonged more than a month, or then it begins to affect how we then do it, I want to say it this way, how we make choices, how it affects our jobs, what we do in our relationships. So when that happens, then we're looking at how anxiety becomes severe. And when it prolongs for a period of time and we're then recalling dreams and we can't move forward, then we're looking at something that is more than that, is trauma. When the situation removes from in front of us and we're still experiencing aftermath, then we know that we're in the throes of trauma. So today we have two experts we're going to talk about. So I wanted to get started. I wanted to ask Sister Mama Sonia if she could help us from her point of view understand what we're speaking about and what is going on. And I know she's been involved in a lot of community events relating to the trauma and the pandemic. So can you share with us where we are and what you're finding and experiencing at this time?
Well, I'm going to first come to you as a mother. When I heard the cries for his mother, as he lay on the ground with a knee in his back, when he said, "Mama," I reacted. When I saw him laying on the ground with three knees on his back, on his neck, and he says, "I can't breathe," He said, Mama.
Mm-hmm.
When people all around were saying, get the knee off his back, leave him alone, he's dying, he said, Mama.
Mm-hmm.
When all of this happened, his mama had already left. His mama had died years ago. And he said, Mama. He
Mm-hmm.
was calling on his mama, I believe, for two reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, when we're in pain, we call on mama. And
Mm-hmm.
number two, he was saying, Mama, I'm coming home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Knowing.
And that's, as far as I'm concerned, that was one of the biggest traumas I think that we have experienced as mothers all over the country, all over the world. No, I wasn't old enough to be his mama. But guess what? At
Mm-hmm.
that at that point,
You
when
became.
he said mama, he reached out to every single mother
Mm-hmm.
in this country, in the whole diaspora. And that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So as a mama, and I walk around and I move around because as a mother, that's what happens. We don't know what to do. We move. We just don't know what to do. So
Mm-hmm.
what to do? I think we need to talk to our children. You know, we're focusing in on the boys, but I have a daughter who had a stop by the cop that I'm so glad it didn't go the way it was. She was driving my daddy's 1969, well, 19 whatever van around, and a cop stopped her and said that he was looking for stolen cars. He asked, "Can I look at it?" And she let him get in. She had no drugs. She had nothing. But it could have gone the other way.
Mm-hmm.
As we go through, you know, we're facing two viruses. We got the virus called COVID-19, and
Mm-hmm.
we have the virus called racism.
Mm-hmm.
The virus called COVID-19, guess what? They're trying to find an antidote, and what is it, vaccine for it.
Vaccine. Mm-hmm.
But is there a vaccine for racism?
Mm-hmm.
People said no. I said yes, it is. Just stop practicing racism. People said it's gotten worse. It hadn't gotten worse. It's just that the covers have been lifted.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
when we have somebody in the White House who's not taking care of the pandemic, nor is that person taking care of this whole racist stuff that's going on. In fact, I just heard he wants to call out not the National Guard, the military. He had a photo op last night. Went to a church, was holding the Bible. The people were doing nothing, and the bullets were being shot at them.
Mm-hmm.
So what can we do? Well, number one, I know we need to pray, and I know that a lot of the protests and stuff that people are doing, they're doing it because they're tired.
Mm-hmm.
We are tired. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just coming to you as a mama this morning. I'm a mama that's tired. I'm a
Yes.
mama that's tired of seeing all of my black boys, my black girls. Number one, they're dying from the pandemic, and they're dying at the hands of racism.
Mm-hmm. And you may have something there, because one of the things that the research is showing is that as African Americans and Hispanic and persons that are low income are being affected more
Yes.
so. So you see, there's a tie between, and we have not been able to put our finger on it, but there is a tie between all of the things around the world that tend
Mm-hmm.
to impact negatively persons. So it may be something that we need to look at in terms of equipping our young people, and that. So when you cry mama, generally all the mothers that I'm working with are having even more sense of a trauma, because
Right.
now they're feeling that they cannot do anything to protect their children,
Mm-hmm.
because usually you're reared as a mom to take care of those of your children. Someone called me and said, what was the movie? Isaiah's, let's see, wait a minute.
Losing Isaiah?
Isaiah.
Losing Isaiah. So in
Yeah.
the thing, they're saying that perpetuating the idea of mothers who cannot protect and take care of their children due to the illnesses in the community of racism, but we are not speaking out about this, and we're not training each other. We're not talking about what to do. The truth of the matter
Mhm.
is, we are, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, we are participating and cooperating with
Yeah.
the whole idea of bury racism, pretend to
Yes.
bury racism.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
these are we're getting ready to have our next support group on Thursday evening for transformation to bring about some of the changes that are going on. And when they said peaceful, but beginning to look at how all of this rewires the brain. So we could choose, and I'm gonna ask Ms. Lucas about that too, but we could choose to do something different in treatment or in education.
Mhm.
So yes. So how would you respond, Ms. Lucas, to some of the things that we're speaking about from your first of all, tell me a little bit about what you were thinking from your practice point of view as we were speaking.
Sure. Well, I deal with people, from all over, and this pandemic first of the COVID struck people and they didn't know how to manage it. And then we have the pandemic of racism that has been ever present, but it is present in a new way now, which has really impacted people. And I find people feeling lost, confused, and
Mhm,
dealing with parents not knowing how to talk to their children,
mhm,
dealing with children, teenagers who are just sometimes confused and angry.
mhm,
When you look at it, we haven't prepared, our younger teenagers aren't prepared for this. They begin to see it in the news, but they felt like they had arrived. They went to school, they had white friends, they had this and that. They could go to any store. They perceived they could go to any store and
mhm.
had a different view of racism. It wasn't as real as it was for prior generations.
Yeah.
We knew what it was like to go to a store and just be followed around. There's some that are old enough to remember, the colored signs where you couldn't go in. And it has taken a different view, racism has, but it still exists. So I'm seeing people who are just overwhelmed, is a lack of a better word,
Yes.
overwhelmed by feelings and emotions and can't even put it into words.
That's right. That's right. And this is why drama, this is why theater is going to be so important. So, one of the things that we're getting ready to do is work with churches in terms of how they're going to express wellness through theater, rethinking the whole situation, putting words to this. And I think you're right on with that. So, one of the things that I wanted to do is to ask you about how do you practice helping parents interpret this to their children? How do you practice it in your treatment? What are some things that you have found and discovered that's helpful?
Well, first, I have to deal with the parents and how they're not processing it. So
Hmm.
we can't go back and help our children until we can help ourselves.
Yes, yes.
Because we have to come to view with how am I feeling as a parent, as
Mhm.
an African American, and I am a parent of a teenager. I have a 17-year-old African American male
Oh,
son.
wow. Yes, yes.
And so he's a pretty responsible child. So he wanted to get a job. It's summer. I need to work. And he says, I need to have my own money so I don't have to rely on you, mom. I need to be responsible. Well, under normal circumstances, wouldn't you be proud for your son to have that thought?
Hmm.
Well, first, just with the pandemic of COVID, you're like, man, I don't even want you out in the public, but I want you to be responsible. But
Yes,
this happened, and there is almost an underlying fear of your child going to work. And at 17 right now, with the pandemic and jobs being hard to find, the only thing you can find pretty much is a fast food job.
yes, yes.
And they face racism at those jobs. Well, he went on his first interview yesterday and he was hired. And you have dual emotions. You are happy, sad, and scared.
Yes. Hmm.
And I think dealing with parents, and I share that with parents to let you know, I get it.
Hmm.
There is that, and we have to balance parents' fears and their ability to talk to their children. And depending on the age of your child, what you tell them. So you might have at home a 5-year old, a 15-year old, and an 8-year old. Those are different conversations.
Yes.
And you have to really be attuned to what is the age of the child and how that child, some people are more emotional and process things differently. So you have to really be in tune with your child and your child's ability to process everything.
Hmm.
Just like I tell adults, you can't watch the news all the time.
Yes.
Too much of it will overwhelm you, too much of it will bring you down. I had to take a news hiatus Saturday and Sunday. I took a
Yes.
hiatus. I couldn't do
Yes.
it anymore. I had to break. I felt heavy watching it. I've
Hmm.
watched the news this morning since I've been up. I had it on at 5 a.m. But we take that break. And so you balance it with your children and have those conversations and listen and listen to when they can't talk anymore and respect that.
And I think on the point of, I think even interpreting the news with them.
Yes.
I think taking what you're saying developmentally, so now parents really need to look at that and to see how to interpret it. And I have to say that we're remiss, particularly in my generation and maybe after, of not really interpreting things to our children, not wanting to them to feel the brunt of racism as we have felt it. So I remember rearing my granddaughter after my daughter deceased. I had my granddaughter, and I remember so we, we had her in dance and we wanted her to learn the arts, and she did this. And so she was mixing with different groups and people from Asia, India, different groups. So, and you didn't want to say, you have to do this or pay attention to this. She thought the world was just beautiful and happy. So she took she had her friends and they just had a ball for years, went to school together. So they took a trip. She reminded me of this like the other week. They took a trip in a bus to go on a field trip where some of the parents went. And all of a sudden, her very best girlfriend didn't want to talk to her. She couldn't understand why she would not speak to me. She didn't want to sit with me, she said. She cried and she cried and she cried. And so that was her first brunt of racism, because the little girl was with the other Euro American children, and she was one of the few African Americans. She did not want to sit with her. So now I had to sit and explain to her. And the neighborhood came together, thank God for them, to help me explain different stories. So, one of the things that I think we could do, I'm thinking as we're talking, is we need to do more storytelling, but
Yes.
tell the story as a history and how to overcome. You see, how to transcend, how to transform through these different situations. So, like your son taking his job, it just seemed like it'd be so important for him to be aware of possible circumstances,
Mhm.
how to prevent those circumstances, how to respond to the circumstances on the job that would be healthy for him and those around him, you see. And so I think that that's where some of the worry, some of the concern, particularly right now, you as a mother of an African American son, seeing that, and then what do I tell my son now?
Mhm.
Without destroying his vision for his future and his sense of being. You
And we have to help redefine that sense of being.
Yeah,
Um, and when we talk, and you said tell the story of the past, we also have to tell the story of the present.
of the present.
That
That's
this is what's going on. It's real, and it's further than George Floyd. It is representative of who we are and where we are. And we live in Arlington, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas, Texas. Never thought I'd be someone living in the suburbs, but that's the place God sent me.
Mm-hmm.
When you're there, that's a little different even than in the city. We're right between Dallas and Fort Worth. And oh, I'll just walk here, I'll walk there. And I have to tell him, remind him, if you're walking on the street, there are things you can and can't do. We had to have the conversation about walking in a hoodie, have the conversation about walking with your headphones on, and little things you have to remind them to keep them to be ever present in
And
the
one of the things that they don't tell them is to do not have your hands in your pocket.
right.
That's one of the main things. Mm-hmm.
And that's a hard one. Think about it. When it's winter and it gets a little
Yes,
colder here than it does in Houston. So it's winter, it's cold, and you're walking home from school. What do you want to do? You want your hoodie on. It keeps you warm. It does have a purpose. You
yes,
want your hands in your pocket because if you're a high school male, you're way too cool to wear gloves.
that's right.
So you want your hands in your pocket. So some of the things that are natural that our children would do, we have to explain to them. Some people disagree with this statement. I say it's okay to tell your child you're in America, but you're not free.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Mm-hmm.
not free. I'm
Right.
sorry.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the same freedoms as your white counterparts. And we have to just be really plain about that. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
because if we were totally free, we wouldn't have these incidents. We wouldn't be having this conversation.
Even today.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's yes, it is a harsh statement, but it is true.
Mm-hmm. What?
And when you
Mm-hmm.
teach them that and face them that, they can begin to at least grasp what the reality of what's going on.
So one of the things that I know that you've done a lot of training as well, and so in one of the things that we're speaking about is that how it's really. I'm trying to hear from young people as well, so I'm
Mhm.
listening to them, and one of the things that they're telling me is that this is making them have headaches,
Mhm.
that they can't understand how this could happen, and you hear it on the news. How could this happen? So therefore, what it is that they see it on TV. They're playing the games,
Mhm.
but they were thinking that they think the games are pretend, but they don't know how the games are replicating the
Mhm.
ideas of life. And also, I want us to speak to so that our audience can hear as to how it's affecting what we do next. I even heard this morning that what's his name, Zuckerberg,
Mhm.
how they're not releasing. They're talking about communication, the words that people use, and they're really criticizing him for not taking stuff information off. And he says, "Well, now don't we have the balance of free speech and what people say? So how do we actually balance that? Even when we walk around daily, what are the things that we say to our children? The words." Our communication to our children, our behavior that possibly influence what could happen or how they should respond. So I want us to talk a little bit about our non-communication and some of the words that we use. I listen to the music, the words that we're using together with
Mhm.
each other. And so, I think sometimes the music says something about what people experience. So a young man yesterday told me, says, "You know what, Dr. Lewis, do you ever listen to any of the rap?" I said, "Yes, but in the last few days, I've been up looking at Street Flavor or something. What is that? Is it it's something that comes on late at night. They had me up, the young people had me up late at night looking at something called Street Flavor.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, check it out. It comes on like 11 something at night or something. But actually, it's showing the rap, the culture, the whatever. And it's all about balancing the anger that you
Mhm.
experience because you feel oppressed. So the only way, what I saw happening is the only way you can get out of this racism is you have to buy your way out. Because when policemen are picked up or when they're stopped, the only thing that happens is money. So they remove them from the job, which is some,
Mm-hmm.
but there's not a penalty for it.
Right.
So the rap music is looking at how if your skin is a certain way, that you're not only removed from the money, but you're also removed from society. But your chances are, one of the songs was saying, the chances are, the probability of getting out is to sell more drugs so you could have the money to get out of the situation. Now, I really sat and listened to that music last night. And then I've been listening to it off and on since the young people said, "You're not listening to all the words. You just, because they're cursing, you stop listening." And so they were all talking about handcuffs and the cops and the police and the whatever. And the only way out is this money. They just keep showing the piles of money and the drugs making and the whatever. And that's how they see it out. So I think maybe bringing this topic to the forefront and
Mhm.
maybe having some intervention and training could also change some of the music, and like Zuckerberg saying, change the way that people respond on their Twitters. And it's kind of all connected, is what I'm saying. This epigenetic thing that we're speaking about.
And that statement, I want to address that statement. The only way out is money.
Hmm.
Really not a true statement. And I'm going
Right.
to say why. As a people, there have been Black people that are notable Black people and who are not just notable in the African American community who have fallen prey to police brutality and racism. Uh,
Hmm.
in Henry Louis Gates being stopped at his own house. Uh,
Hmm.
African Americans who live in affluent neighborhoods that are predominantly white who are stopped
Hmm.
going to their own house. They have the money, they have the titles, they have the esteem. It is far greater than that.
Hmm.
There is a term, post traumatic slave syndrome.
Yes.
It is defined as a condition that exists when a population has experienced multi generational trauma resulting from centuries of slavery and continues to experience oppression and institutionalized racism. And
Hmm.
that's where we are. And
Yeah.
so, breaking that down a little more, when we begin to understand it's not just the racism of the day, it is historical, it is built into the fiber and foundation of America. When America started, those of African descent were only considered to three-fifths a
Three
person. We
fifths.
weren't considered human beings.
Hmm.
That is the foundation of this country.
Hmm.
So when you have this and you think, well, if I just have money that they have, I'm okay. You're not.
No, you're not. Hmm.
Because the foundation of our mentality is that we were not human beings. And we've been granted human being status, but it's still a second class status. And even your money doesn't buy that because when someone sees you, when someone who has extreme racist views sees you, they see you as color.
Yeah.
And I will say this, I get offended when people say, I don't see color. I say, well, if you don't see color, you don't see me.
You don't see me.
I do not see that as a compliment. That I see your color. Seeing color does not mean that's a racist issue. It means you see who I am. I am an African American female.
Hmm.
Don't discount any part of me. Don't discount the fact that I'm a female. Don't discount the fact that I'm African American. Those are something you see. And we own that. But in order to, they will say that to make you feel better, to feel not a racist. No, this is who I am. And I am a victim of multi generational trauma because of that. So when you don't see me as an African American female, you're
Hmm.
denying me the trauma that I faced just because of that identity.
I received some information from Malefi Asante, who is really outstanding in terms of understanding the impact of multi-generational
Yeah.
racism and those things. And in there, it was saying, please study the reason why people are resisting filling out the census.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I really had not studied that in that way. That the census came about when they were actually reviewing. When you mentioned 3/5 of a person, and so some kind of way he's explaining that we have in our genetic makeup, in our understanding, in the culture, and the communication over the years to be fearful, and of some things, people collecting information
Mm-hmm.
and treatment medically. So he was looking at how that impacts on persons receiving healthcare as well as the census. So when you mentioned the 3/5, he mentioned something about this is when they started taking census, and they had a reason for equating the person as 3/5. And so he sent out some information, or some information was sent out under his name or with his information, with his study, that now they're separating people from Egypt. And so in the census is embedded information where cultures, Hispanic cultures, are separated, and
Mm-hmm.
persons of African American descent or heritage are being separated. Okay, so it has another meaning. Now, I have not studied this myself. This was sent to me this week, but it blew my mind to say in this census this time that people are no, Egypt is no longer considered a part of Africa. Okay, it
They've
written.
been trying that for years.
Yes, so now it's in the census. So we did a study here at the Women's Resource Center. We sent out a study in the community, a survey, asking people uh, their hesitancy to fill out the form, the hesitancy about the census, the hesitancy about healthcare. And invariably, we would get the fear of the person not taking them seriously, and the
Mm-hmm.
fear of being an African American in the healthcare system, and the fear of giving up your information. And so I was thinking, well, now I can really see the person who doesn't, they won't go to the hospital. They're fearful of take. They don't understand the medication. Is who gives them the medication
Mm-hmm.
and who's suggesting. So I think race. We need to really begin to look at wellness and health in terms of how we are communicating what it's about and who we are. Um, the washing the hands, the
Mm-hmm.
wearing the mask. I am, and I've read, and as I ride down the street, I'm seeing more African Americans that are not wearing masks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now I'm trying to interview and find out why are you not wearing, or why do you not wear a mask? And it's kind of like a response to the racism. It's a fear of being controlled by fake
Mm-hmm.
information. So now one of them told me this is just a matter of how to control us. This is fake information that's put out, and the washing the hands and all of this. I said, so I wanted to see what your take is on this with your patients, with the clients that you work with.
Well, just in general, there is a big segment of the population that doesn't believe it, and you get younger people. So here's a real case, two real cases this week of people I know where one person who has died of COVID because their grandson went somewhere hanging out with friends, came home, lives with grandmother, older, grandson's fine, had COVID, passed it on to grandmother, she died. He didn't believe it was a big deal. And the misinformation that was put out was that young people can't get it. Well,
Mm-hmm.
you can have it and be asymptomatic and be basically you're a carrier.
Mm-hmm.
You can transmit it to others. And so we have this idea that it's just a way that you're trying to control us. It doesn't affect us. But I wanted to comment on some of the underlying reasons I see that it's impacting the African American community. We, like as you said, we have a mistrust of the medical system, but
Mm-hmm.
that is a justified mistrust.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons, and this is even talking with doctors, one of the reasons we die quicker and are so impacted not just by COVID but other things, we don't get treated the same way in the medical system, especially African American females. You go in, we're supposed to be stronger and tougher, so we go in with symptoms and you're brushed off. And so by the time you're taken seriously for your issues,
It's too late.
it's gotten worse and you will die at an earlier rate. I've heard too many stories where African Americans did not get tested for COVID, had all the symptoms, the ones that you would suspect, going in with fever, going in with this, going with, and still not being tested. And
Mm-hmm.
and by the time they test them, you go back 2 weeks later and your symptoms have gotten worse. And then you're tested and you're dead in 2 days. We are treated differently in the healthcare system.
Mm-hmm. I
And
think.
And
Mhm.
when it comes to the mental, I'll just say this real quick. When it comes to the mental health system, we still have that mistrust because happens in this house stays in this house.
Yes.
And we don't tell other people our business. And Black people don't get depressed. And Black people don't have time to be depressed. Our life is to this. So the whole wellness and healthcare system, we are disenfranchised from it for so many reasons.
Hmm. And I think that we need to really, as a group of people, professionals, African Americans, persons who have been disenfranchised, it would be healthy if we got together to continue to develop the interventions. So often, what we do is we implement the interventions that Euro Americans develop for the community. And what
Hmm.
I'm finding, to dispel the myths and to look at the myths, we must then survey and implement. And what I find is that if you reach out to ask persons to help you, what they do is they take the information and send it to a larger facility to develop it and come
Hmm.
back for the information instead of helping the person who's trying to help the people
Right.
directly. And so one of the things is that it disempowers, if I can use that word in that way. It takes away from the power of the nucleus of the people. If we could give through education the power back to understanding where those myths come from and how the myths actually perpetuated from truths and how we expanded it because of the fear to hold on to what we thought we could hold on to. You see,
Mm,
what we could do to give us some impetus or strength. And this is where I think mental health, what we could do in terms of making interventions for mental health, is actually help each person build where did they get the truth from? Where did they get their truth from? And how is their truth going to help them pass? What is it going to do for their children? And once you can do the intergenerational education with daycare and early childhood education and parenting, um, looking at the systemic approaches to doing that, then we could empower our communication, we
mhm.
could empower our education, and many other things. And so I think maybe we would probably have less mental health diagnosis, so to speak.
True. But a lot of our mental health diagnosis goes back to that post-traumatic slave
It is.
syndrome because we don't deal with it. As you said, we don't even want to admit that there's an issue. We talked earlier that we haven't passed on to younger generations the reality of racism. We are not listing in a post-racist society. We are living in a racist society. And because we haven't passed that on, that's a mental illness right there when you're not dealing with the reality of just the reality of racism and
Yes.
that it is alive and well. And when we're ignoring it, yes, we're not, that's causing mental
Mhm,
unwellness,
mhm,
um,
mhm, mhm,
and it's passed on. This
mhm.
lack of mental health is being passed on generation to generation because of our mistrust, because of our not wanting to deal with it, because of our belief it does not exist.
Yes. Well, I'm going to look forward to doing this paper with you, and
Yes.
we're going to start we're starting the writing process on next month, and I think that that's going to be fantastic because we'll be actually looking at what we're speaking about and coming up with the interventions that we know would be healthy. And I think it's time for us to actually pull together our strengths in order to heal. So I hope you come back. I hope when we could talk later on about some of the fantastic things that you're doing. And I hate I had to miss your show the other day, but we had a program going on at the same time. But I think you could send me the tape if you got the tape so that
It'll be up on YouTube. I'm working on that. And I will say for those listening, that it's been the third Thursday of every month. I have something called Thinking Thursday, which
yeah.
is a live Facebook presentation. Well, I'm turning it into a blown podcast. And every Thursday on Facebook, under my Facebook page, under my name, Bronwyn Lucas, we'll have a podcast, Thinking Thursday.
Okay.
And on there, I'll tell you the different platforms that it will be on. It starts the third Thursday of this month. And this month, we will be talking about trauma
Okay. Very good.
and what that really is.
Well, I'm going to look at that and I'm going to try to send some of that out with your permission
Yes,
uh, to persons. Thank you so much for being with us today. I know that Sister Mama Sonia had another event to attend, so she told me, but I wanted to thank her for being with us. So I look forward to seeing you real soon.
yes, I look forward to coming back and joining you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. I again want to thank Ms. Lucas, Brahma Lucas, for being with us, and Sister Mama Sonia. So today our discussion was kind of plain talk, looking at historical racism and the impact on our health and wellness, and what we will do in our educational system, and identifying our responsibility in moving forward for our wellness. I do want to say that please push our button, donate button there so that we could implement in the community our youth development program. And this is one of the few ways that we can get it done. And we'll appreciate whatever you can do. Um, so think about this. It is not the circumstances we meet. It is the manner in which we respond that determines health, happiness, and success. I'm going to look forward to seeing you back next week. Thank you.